headlines. Trade ministers from the Commonwealth countries around the globe have been meeting in London this week in an effort to boost trade within that group. The Commonwealth of Nations is made up of 52 countries, a population of 2.3 billion people, and added together, the group boasts a combined economy of more than $10 trillion, with an annual GDP growth in excess of 4%. Ministers have been discussing how to tap that potential by working together to strengthen trade and investment links between member countries. And in a post-Brexit world for the UK, the talks are especially key for Britain. Joining us now is Dr. Enelamah, who is Nigeria's Minister of Trade, Industry and Investment. Welcome to the programme. It's very good to have you here. And you are here, presumably, involved in those talks?
Absolutely.
Right, well, let's come on to trade in a minute, because Nigeria itself, of course, its economy has been struggling, as we mentioned, very high dependence on oil. But now there is a plan, and what is the centre of that plan to boost the economy?
Yes, so we have a plan, the Nigeria Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. And it's basically a plan, like the name says, to boost the economy and look at those key priority areas that we know that if we get right, our economy will definitely thrive. And let me mention just three in the interest of time. One is agriculture and food. There's a plan to make sure we diversify away from oil. And we think one of the major focal areas has to be agriculture and food processing and adding more value, because we're already...
Well, that already is interesting. Are you talking about infrastructure there? Because I know there's been a focus on that in Nigeria. Or are you talking about how you trade? So
that's the second pillar, infrastructure, energy. And we think that by getting our energy requirements right, energy infrastructure, that will clearly be helping boost production in country and industrialization, which is the third pillar. Now, all these things, as you know, are interwoven. I think when you do it right, you become more competitive and obviously you trade better.
OK, so let's talk about trade a little bit more and your dependency, as I've mentioned, on oil. Let's come to trade first. We find ourselves in a world where there is a risk now of more protectionism. Is that something that worries you?
Well, it's something that I think concerns everybody, and rightly so. But I would say that one of the benefits of the meetings we've been holding here in London amongst the trade ministers of the Commonwealth is reaffirming the importance of trading amongst nations and trading in a way that creates win-win as opposed to a zero-sum game. Because I think there's a concern by some countries that globalization hasn't always paid off in the way it's affected their countries. And this is something clearly that is a real concern. But I would say that it doesn't take away from the many benefits of trade, both local and international trade.
Yes, but what has been said by Donald Trump, and to some extent the UK, is that these very broad trade deals are less beneficial than bilateral trade deals. What are your thoughts on that?
My view is that it's not either or. There are some things that are easier done, on a multilateral basis. And I'll give you an example. The trade facilitation agreement that has just been signed under the platform and auspices of the World Trade Organization, I think most people will accept that it will be a trade boosting agreement, because what it does is to lower the cost of trade and make it easier for everybody. But there are also strategic reasons why you might enter into trade links and relationships with particular countries. I mean, take for instance the UK and Nigeria. We've had historic ties, and I think there are many reasons why it might make sense to get our relationship right. So
let me ask you then finally and very briefly about this dependency on oil.
Well, I think the one thing to understand about oil, and this is a well-studied phenomenon, is that because you get a lot of revenues, export revenues from oil, there is a tendency to, do less in other areas. And Nigeria has been talking about diversifying away from oil. And I think the fall in oil price actually gives us a real opportunity, to do it. I'm sure you've had
the issue.
To force the issue,
Thank
absolutely.
you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.